Okay, so we're recording now and we're going to begin the lesson. So I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint and I want to make sure this is working right. So someone just tell me first, is this PowerPoint screen there? Do you see it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Great. And of course, we always start, before we start, there's always something I want to know. What is it I want to know? I want to know something good. So for us to get started, somebody tell me something good. Somebody's got to jump in here. Come on, something good. I know there's something good out there. Hey, I can wait all day.
Well, I've been still catching up on sleep, so I've been feeling very relaxed.
Okay, that's great. There's something good. Yeah, during school, you have to get up early in the morning and you miss that sleep and you get worn out. So it's good that you can get some sleep. It's also good for your psychological health because you need that rest. Okay, thank you. All right, last part of chapter 11 is on emotion. There's three components to emotion. The first is the biological component. So when you feel emotion, there's something that happens in your body. So imagine for a moment that you're walking alone on a dark street. Suddenly somebody jumps out of a dark spot and starts running towards you. You would probably experience fear and run away. So there's internal physical changes that are occurring in your body during emotion. When we feel some kind of emotion, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in and our eyes, the pupils become dilated. They open up more, so they're letting in more light. Our mouth becomes dry. You know, you have that experience of feeling goosebumps, or you start to perspire for when you feel certain emotions. Your respiration increases. In other words, you start breathing faster. Your heart rate increases. And so this is because those adrenal glands are producing epinephrine and norepinephrine into your system and getting your body ready to do something as it experiences this emotion. And also your digestion stops during that time. Once that emotion passes, then your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and you go back to that state of homeostasis. So your pupils become constricted again. Your mouth isn't dry anymore. You begin salivating. The goosebumps go away. You're not perspiring. Your breathing returns to normal. Your heart rate goes back to normal. And if your digestion is occurring, then that goes back to digesting. So there's physical changes in our body when we experience emotion. Another component to emotion is the cognitive component, how we think about things. If you're at Not Scary Farm and you're expecting somebody to be jumping out, when somebody does jump out, you might not be as afraid. But if you're just walking down the street and all of a sudden somebody jumps out at you, you might really be afraid. If you see your girlfriend or your boyfriend, okay, your heart rate might increase, your breathing might increase, you experience some kind of emotion. Somebody else sees your boyfriend or girlfriend and they're just like, whatever. So how we think about things, what we expect from circumstances, what our values are, all those things affect how we feel emotion. And of course, what you find to be pleasurable, somebody else might think is boring. So that's an important part, but cognitive elements of emotion are hard to measure. The third component of emotion is our behavioral expressions of that emotion. We know when we feel emotion, we might laugh or we might cry, our body might tense up. Okay, that behavioral component is a very powerful form of communication. It's not just the words we say, but it's our facial expressions that communicate much more than just the literal meaning of the words. In fact, those facial expressions are so important that sometimes when you send emails or texts, you put those little emojis in that text message to convey that emotion. Now, we have a genuine smile called a Duchenne smile, and then we have the just social smiles and not general smile. So looking at these two pictures, can anyone tell me which one you think is the real smile?
I think the top one is the real smile.
And why?
I don't know. He looks happier. Like his eyes look happier. So,
Okay, so that's it. A real smile involves all of our face. When we're just putting on a fake smile, it involves our mouth, but that real smile involves the whole face. So you can kind of see just by looking at somebody if they're conveying a real smile or just kind of a fake smile. All right, now we have 4 theories on emotion. The first theory is the James Lange theory. The James Lange theory says that our emotions depend on the feedback we get from our behavioral response. So because we're crying, then we feel sorry, or because we struck somebody, we feel angry. And so it's those behavioral expressions that cause us to feel that emotion. So the behavior comes first. And then because of that behavior, we feel some emotion. The second theory is the Cannon-Bard theory. The Cannon-Bard theory says that the thalamus, that little part underneath our brain there, sends simultaneous messages to the autonomic nervous system and to the cerebral cortex. And so that produces a cognitive experience, something like fear, and at the same time, it activates that autonomic nervous system, so that produces that physiological arousal and then our behavioral expressions. So the Cannon-Bard theory is saying both the behavior and the emotion are occurring simultaneously. They're occurring at the same time. Now, there's a facial feedback theory. Facial feedback theory says that what we do with our face is going to cause us to feel some kind of emotion. So try this. Think of maybe what kind of emotion you're feeling right now, and then smile. Put a smile on your face. Now, did you feel maybe any little happier when you smile? Usually when we do this in a class and we tell people to smile, all of a sudden we hear little giggles and laugh because everybody's kind of feeding off of each other. So the facial feedback theory says what we do with our face is going to feed into and elicit some kind of emotion. And this is something we, in psychology, we actually use. You can apply this. If you spend a few minutes every day at the beginning of the day and just spend just a couple minutes just forcing yourself to smile. Doesn't matter if you're happy or whatever, just make yourself smile. And if you do that every day on a daily basis, then you're going to start seeing a bit of a mood change, and you're going to start seeing and feeling a little bit more happiness when you go through the day. And of course, if you're at home and your brothers and sisters, your parents are around and you start smiling, they think you finally cracked up or something, but that's okay. All right, so there's something to try. You can change your mood. If you were to spend some time smiling every day, you'd be amazed at how your mood changes. The last theory is Schachter's two-factor theory. He says we feel things within our body, but then we're looking to the external cues of what's around us to interpret that emotion. So we could be crying. Well, what emotion are we feeling? Well, if we're crying and we look around and we're at a wedding, then we say, oh, I'm crying because I'm happy. If we're crying and we look around and we're at a funeral, then we say, oh, I'm crying because I'm sad. So we have some kind of expression, some kind of physiological feelings that we're aware of, but then we look to the external cues around us to interpret what kind of emotion we're feeling. So with the James Lange theory, okay, we see this person and there's a rattlesnake. You know, when I used to coach cross country, we used to run up at the Santa Rosa Plateau, and so we saw snakes up there sometime. But one time I came on a trail and there was a rattlesnake that was up like that one in the picture and rattling. So to make sure I didn't just run close to it. Anyway, with the James Lange theory, we have that perception of some external stimulus. So we see that snake and then we feel the arousal and we might run away. Because we run away, then we say, I run away, I feel fear. So there's that physiological arousal first, and then we have the emotion of fear. With the Cannon-Bard theory, it says we see the snake and simultaneously we get that arousal and we feel fear. So they both happen at the same time. In Schachter's two-factor theory, he says, okay, I see the snake and I feel this physiological arousal. And so because I see the snake there, that must mean I'm afraid. Okay, so you could feel that same physiological arousal, okay, but in a different situation, you might interpret it differently. All right, so if I was in the class, this is something else I do. Have you put a pen in your mouth and hold it and say, okay, how do you feel? And then show your teeth. And a lot of times when people show their teeth, then they start feeling happier, and we'll sometimes get little giggles going on in class. So what theory would explain why if you're holding a pen in your mouth and you show your teeth that you might feel happier? Oh, it's there at the bottom of the slide, the facial feedback theory. Okay, they did a study and they gave people a shot of epinephrine. They told them that it was a vitamin. I said, okay, thank you for participating in this study. We're giving you a shot of a vitamin. One group was correctly informed about what they could expect from that shot. That they would have hand tremors, they might feel excitement, they might feel some heart palpitations. Another group was misinformed. They were told, okay, the shot, it might cause some itching and numbness and maybe a headache. The third group was given a shot and they weren't told anything. After they were given the shot, each group was put in a room with a guy who was acting happy or unhappy. And so when they were put in that room, that first group that was told what to expect from the shot, they were in that room, they said, man, I feel kind of strange. Must be the vitamins. The second group, they were given the shot and they were misinformed about what to expect. So that group, they said, I feel strange. And they looked at that happy guy and they said, oh, I guess I'm feeling happy like that guy. And then the third group also, who was given no information when they felt this arousal, They said, wow, I guess I feel happy like that guy. Who can tell me which factor this study demonstrates?
Would that be the two-factor?
Yes, exactly. That's Schachter's two-factor. That we feel this arousal, but then we also look to our environment to interpret that. Very good. All right, culture can play a role in emotions too. And when we study different cultures, we see that there's some universal emotions. And we see a role of evolution in our emotions. People that were standing around with an elephant was charging, somebody that was afraid and ran away, well, they survived and reproduced to pass on that fear. Somebody who wasn't afraid got stomped by the elephant, so they couldn't reproduce. So there's that biological component that certain emotions help us survive, and that got passed on through the generations. Another thing that can elicit emotion is how we express our emotion. Okay, display rules. In certain countries, people can be very close together when they talk, and that's just the way they are. In this country, if somebody's standing very close to you and has their face just a few feet away from you, then that could make you feel very uncomfortable. I think some of you think back to that first day when you had a sub, and one of the things I left for you to do was either give each other distance or stand very close. So sometimes if somebody's just really right in your face, it makes you feel uncomfortable. But in other cultures, that's different. In some cultures, when people experience loss, I used to be an altar boy. And so one of the things I would serve at were funerals. And I would see that how people express their grief differently, and how in some emotions people were just wailing in the church and screaming, crying, and others were very sedate during the ceremony. So different people express emotions in different ways, and how we see things we might interpret differently. If we're in Egypt and two men walk up to each other and kiss, that's a standard way of greeting. But if we're in the United States and we see two men walk up and kiss, we're going to interpret that differently. And so we have display rules. What's culturally acceptable ways for us to express our emotions? Now, there are different researchers that say, okay, here's basic human emotions, and some have some emotions, some have others, but there's certain emotions that always seem to appear in different researchers' list of emotions. So there's some that are common. Now, Plutchik said that we have a combination of emotions that make us feel different things. So, for instance, when we feel both joy and acceptance, then we have this emotional feeling of love. But if we have acceptance and fear, then we have this emotion of submission. If we have fear and surprise, then we're feeling awe. If we have surprise and sadness, then we feel disappointment. If we have sadness and disgust, we feel remorse. If we feel disgust and anger, then we feel contempt. If we're experiencing anger and anticipation, then we have this sense of aggressiveness. And if we have anticipation and joy, then we feel optimism. So combinations of emotions or feelings go together to have us feel some other kind of emotion. Now, this principle of our physiological changes to emotion leads to polygraph testing. Who knows what a polygraph is? Does anybody know what a polygraph is? Okay, a polygraph is a lie detector. Okay, so we use polygraph testing. The theory is that when people lie, that they feel guilty and anxious. And so a polygraph is measuring our blood pressure, our heart rate. It measures something called galvanic skin response. That's GSR. We actually have electrical responses that go through our skin. Okay, and when people lie, supposedly they're feeling guilty, and so then their heart rate goes up, or their blood pressure goes up, or they start breathing more heavily. Okay, but do all people really feel bad about lying? Okay, especially people who are psychologically disturbed. Okay, some people get nervous when they tell the truth. Suppose you're working at a bank and you're having maybe an inappropriate relationship at the bank with one of the other employees at the bank, and you and that employee happen to go back into the bank vault one day and had this relationship. Well, then one day they notice money's missing from the bank vault, so now they're putting all the employees on a lie detector test and asking them questions. So they put you on a lie detector test, and they said, "Did you steal money from the bank vault?" Well, you didn't steal money, but when they said bank vault, you remembered that encounter with the employee, and all of a sudden you have this physiological response. So the lie detector is going crazy when you said no. And so they're saying, "Oh, you liar." Okay, so there's things that can affect that. I usually do a demonstration in class. I have a little GSR, which is meant for biofeedback. And so you hold it in your hand. And so we can get that where the tone goes. And usually I'll find somebody who has that I know has a boyfriend or a girlfriend. So then I ask them a question like, "Oh, do you know Jake?" And all of a sudden, when they think of their boyfriend, all their physiological responses go up. So they say yes, but according to the lie detector, that would be a no. Okay, so lie detectors aren't reliable. Okay, they're measuring your physiological response. Well, some people get nervous even when they tell the truth. Other people's are able to lie and not feel bad about it. Okay, so all it can tell you is that you're experiencing some kind of emotion, but it can't really tell you if you're lying or not. And so that's why lie detectors are not allowed in court, because they're not reliable. And so some people get put in a tough situation that they didn't do something, but now they're saying, "Well, just take a lie detector and prove it." But maybe they're kind of an anxious person and they're afraid that anxiety is going to come through, and then it's going to look like they're lying when they're telling the truth. All right, there's three basic components of emotion. Tell me one of the components of emotion. Somebody's got to chime in here. Tell me one of the basic components of emotion.
One of them is behavioral.
Yes, one of them is behavioral. What's another component of emotion?
Cognitive.
Cognitive, yes. How we think about things. And what's the last component?
Biological.
Physiological, yes. So physiological, how our body reacts, cognitive, how we think and expect things, and behavioral, what we do, how we express that emotion. Okay, we see a bear, our hearts race, and we run for cover. So then because we ran away, we feel afraid. Which of the theories is that an example of?
James Lang.
Very good. The James Lang theory, that the behavior comes first, and then because of the behavior, we feel the fear. All right, very good. All right, that's the end of chapter 11. So one of the things I asked at the beginning is, do you think that this is valuable to continue to have these on B days, or do you think I should just record them and then you can just watch them and there's no point in me doing this live? So anybody have any thoughts about that right now?
I prefer the live.
Okay. Okay, well, if anybody has a thought, when you're thinking about it and you think about it later, then send me an email. Let me know if you think this is beneficial to have it live, or if you'd rather just have it recorded and then we can, you can watch it some other time. Let me know. All right, before we go, any other questions or comments today? Okay, getting some comments on the chat there. That's great. Okay, thank you guys for being here, and I hope you all have a wonderful Easter with your family, and hope the Easter Bunny can get out in this pandemic and bring you a little candy.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.